All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video by yours truly. We got Yukong in the spotlight. This is going to be my guide with regards to how to build her. She's one of the most, if not the most, complex 4-star character due to problems that she has. And these problems aren't necessarily bad problems. They're things that you have to fix and have a good degree of insight, so that once you fix those problems, she performs incredibly well. We're going to address all of them, and hopefully you'll have a good deal of information that you can take with you so that your Yukong is an incredible harmony character that not only supports and does her job supportively, that's even a word, but she also does good damage as well. So let's go ahead and get into it. There's a lot to talk about. So one of the first things I want to talk about off rip is Yukong has 100 taunt, which I need to start addressing this more with every guide that I do. She has 100 taunt, which that is a lot of taunt, and she is more prone to taking hits from enemies because her taunt value is high. Not to mention, it's coupled with her having very low defense scaling as well. She has incredibly low defense scaling, much like Lorcha. So building her with some HP and some defense, really more of an emphasis on defense, because her traces actually have some HP in there where you can level her up and get higher HP. So really more emphasis, if you get some defense percent inside of her relic substats, that's not a bad thing. Now, she doesn't need them on all 6 of them. Okay, there is 6. Maybe like 2 or 3 pieces, get some defense percent in there just to make her a little bit more tankier. But for the most part, it is worth mentioning. She has high taunt value, she has low defense, so she's squishy and she's gonna get hit. So you obviously don't want to build her like a straight up fucking glass cannon. The other thing that's worth mentioning is what is going to be her best light cone. Well, there's 2 ways to run her. You either run her with a mono imaginary composition, or you run her outside of a mono imaginary composition. With that being said, if you're running her with the mono imaginary composition, obviously Planetary Rendezvous is going to be a very strong option. It gives 12% damage bonus to everybody who's of the same element. You're at the very least going to have 3 people of the same element, and then once Imbibita Lunae releases, he's going to have you're gonna have 4 people getting that damage bonus. So this is a very strong option, but if you don't have it, like me, I don't have it, not a big deal. All of the harmony light cones are actually just really fucking good. You can't really go wrong with any of them. They're all strong, but what I will say is she's actually very synergistic with the free-to-play past and future light cone. Reason being is because you have to fine-tune her speed to ensure that she's right behind or right before your strongest character, so that they're receiving the attack percent, crit rate, and crit damage buff. So she synergizes with this perfectly well because she's always going to be right before your strongest characters. So giving that damage bonus to the strongest character is nothing, it's not a problematic issue for her. I think her best in slot, obviously, I think almost every harmony character outside of Asta's best in slot is going to be this bad boy right here. She has 130 energy cost burst. That's a very, very expensive burst. So you having energy recharge is very important. The fact that it gives that to you is huge. She's not skill point hungry, I would say, but there are times where you have to use her skill multiple times because somebody's ult came up a little bit earlier than anticipated, or you just want your main DPS and supportive DPS to deal a little more damage. There's times where you're going to be spamming her skill sometimes, and that's okay. That takes care of this problem as well, that one skill point, because it's not every time you're doing it. Sometimes you're going to auto attack with her to break some shield, maybe get a little extra damage in there. And then of course it does the same thing as the free to play light cone. So I will tell you, this is definitely worth scooping up. Outside of that, if you want to use Carve the Moon on her, that's also not a bad option. I'm not the biggest fan of this light cone, but it does provide value. Attack percent to the whole party, crit damage, energy. You can literally use all of that on the mono imaginary team compositions. Outside of them, Dance 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 might be a strong option, or the same things we're using that I just mentioned. The other thing that is worth mentioning is she has a 90 toughness damage burst. That is very powerful. Same degree of toughness as a Silverwolf. However, she does not have Silverwolf's capability to just make everybody weak to the imaginary element. So I do see some potential for a break effect build on her. I also like the energy regeneration charge, but it's so freaking niche that I'm not confident enough to recommend this to you. But imaginary units have the strongest potency of action value delay coupled with speed delay in the game, so building break effect makes them even more ridiculous with delaying enemies. So I can see a world where this could be a good option for her. Again, I'm not confident enough to mention it just because it's so incredibly niche. So that's the light cone tier list. I guess not tier list, but recommendations or thoughts that I have on each individual light cone. You can't really go wrong with any of them. Now, going to her traces, we're gonna go over the traces and the Eidolons together. I wouldn't touch her auto attack, nor would I touch this, unless you're like me, you don't like, these don't cost nothing, level 2, level 3. I wouldn't touch them outside of this with a 10-foot pole, and I'll explain why. Her auto attack literally never receives her crit rate and crit damage buff, and it will never receive it until you get her to E6. So her damage for her auto attack is so shorted because she can never actually make use of her ult's crit rate, crit damage bonus, and even her attack percent bonus. She can't make use of that either because she's giving it to the other 2 people that go right after her. The only time you actually take advantage of the attack percent bonus is when you use her technique to open up in combat. And that's it. You never see this again. So investing in these 2, yeah, sure, you'll deal some more damage, but it's such a wasted investment on a game that provides such a scarcity with regards to resources. It's just not worth investing in these 2 at all until you hit at least E6. And I do mean at least. I don't care about her E4 dealing 30% more damage. E6 is going to allow you to actually give the attack percent, the crit rate, and the crit damage bonus all to her auto attack. And it does a plethora of other incredible things as well. In addition to that, it just opens up the board for what she's capable to do. But one of the most important things is it actually allows her to take advantage of her broken freaking buffs. So I don't think you should touch these at all. Put all your investment into her supportive capabilities and of course her biggest damage dealing ability, her ult, which has a ridiculous amount of scaling. I'm at 323 at 7. If I level it up, pretty much a 20% increase in the attack percent scaling, which is massive. So I recommend pouring all your resources into these 2, get them up as high as you possibly can. And then of course you definitely want to invest in this. This is literally a planetary rendezvous for free 99. And then this one over here, you don't want her getting obviously crowd controlled. You're going to invest in these. It's going to happen, right? You don't want her getting crowd control. Invest in these 2, unlock them, so they're going to provide an immense amount of value. And then obviously start filling in the blank for all of these damage bonuses so that her ult can deal some good damage. Now, she's a very expensive character. What I mean by this is you need a certain amount of Eidolons in order for her to perform optimally, because she has a very big issue, and that issue is the energy recharge issue. You need her ult up very fast for her to perform at a high level. And because of that, you have to take her to 70 plus just to unlock this. This is actually very huge. It gives her 2 energy every time an ally performs an action while her roaring bowstrings buff is active. And that is an action and not a turn. So what that means is if you pop her skill and give the whole team, or give the 2 roaring bowstring buffs, you could literally pop everyone's ult, which is 4 characters on the team, and then she would get 8 energy from that. Then she still has a roaring bowstrings buff because you haven't used up any turns. You would then attack with the next 2 characters, and that would be another 4 energy. So you can literally get 12 energy back if your whole team's ult was up and then the next 2 people attack. That's huge. You might even get an extra 2 energy back from her attacking herself. I just don't remember. I think you do. So 12 to 14 energy back with whole ult up, like that's huge when it comes to optimizing her energy recharge so that you're getting her burst up. Okay, so this, you have to get her up to 70 plus. Otherwise, she's a bit scuffed in the energy recharge department. Now, if you have her with Bronya's Light Cone, that helps tremendously, but still, it goes to show that having energy recharge on her is very important. Now, let's go ahead and talk about her Eidolons. I think it is paramount for you to have her E2. I think it's absolutely significant to unlock her E2, because again, it makes her get her ult up much faster. She feels much better once you unlock her E2, her 70 plus talent that provides to that. Once you do this, you're gonna feel the difference in your Yukong's performance. I think Yukong at E0 is incredibly mid. And like I said, that's why I said she's a bit expensive. Actually, she's very expensive because you need her E2, you need a level 70 plus, and then you also need an energy recharge. Yeah, believe it or not, you need an energy recharge rope. Once you get all this energy recharge problem solved, she starts to perform incredibly well. Now, what her E2 does is basically every time somebody's ult fills up on your team, she gains 5 energy. So let's say you're in battle and you're literally shooting, and then somebody's ult fills up. She's going to get 5 energy from that. Now it says that it will reset after you cast her ult. Basically what this means is once the other 3 characters on your team get their ults up, she gets 15 energy back. If they get their ults up again, she will not get any more energy until she pops her ult herself and resets the duration. Hopefully that makes sense. But long story short, She needs a lot of energy recharge, guys. Like I said, we come over here, take a look at this bad boy. That's 130 max energy. Now, the next thing we have to discuss is speed. Another problem that she has. She has good speed, but the problem with her is she always needs to go before your main and supportive DPS. Now, you don't always have a supportive DPS. Some people like to do hyper buff comps. They're only buffing one character. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. She still has to be right before that character. So her speed has to be fine-tuned in a way to where she's always going before the main and or supportive DPSs. Because of this, there's also another problem. You cannot have a team composition where the character speeds are out of sync. So not only does her speed need to be fine-tuned, the rest of your team speed needs to be fine-tuned. I'll give you a perfect example. I used her with Japar at one time. He was my tank on the team. Everybody else had speed boots on and he didn't. Motherfucker was so slow that we ran laps around him to the point where he ended up being right after my Yukong. And I was giving my goddamn useless Japar in terms of attack damage, doing damage. He was getting the buff from her, which is a horrible thing. So everybody's speed needs to be fine-tuned in a way to where it's Yukong, main DPS, support DPS, healer, or tank, right? And in this case, though, I will say, Lorcha is somebody who can not only heal, but also deal some pretty damn good damage, especially next to Yukong. So it's okay if he's in that little 2-slot spot where she's giving the buff to him. But most other people outside of that mono imaginary team composition, you're gonna want them to not be fucking up the rotation. Come on, man, don't be messing up the rotation. You know who that is, you're a real one, bro. So back to what I was saying, what you want to do is make sure that you're looking at your whole entire team and deciding who your roles are, and then you put her speed in a way to where she's going before them. That's all I'm going to say. Now, let's go ahead and talk about relics. What are going to be the best sets in the game for her? Obviously, you cannot go wrong with the imaginary set. It's just too damn good with her, especially for the mono imaginary team. Outside of the mono imaginary team, you're going to lose value because, well, if you're not using Welt or, you know, other mono characters that are imaginary, then you're not going to be imprisoning anybody unless she's the one imprisoning them by breaking their shield. So this set loses a ton of value once you're not running mono. So what I would recommend outside of this set is Musketeer Wild Wheat is an option just because it makes her fast, especially if it can put her before her. Again, you have to always be conscious of this, how much speed she has, but that is an option. The other option you can do is you can do like a 2-piece imaginary, but with a 2-piece 12% attack boost. If they're weak to the imaginary element and you want to make her a dedicated break effect character so that she's severely delaying their action value, you could also do a break effect set, like I said, but that is a niche scenario, but that is also an option. Me personally though, I'm gonna keep it a stack. I'm probably too lazy to do all of that. She's either getting the Musketeer Wild Wheat or she's getting this. Whichever ones are already built, that's what we're gonna do. We're not spending all the time in the world trying to make sure I have a set for every freaking scenario. We're gonna use this whether she wants it or not, to keep it straight. But there are some options out there. You can also increase her survivability. She is squishy, so that you can also go for the tanks options. But me personally, I'll just rock with this the entire time. And outside of that mono imaginary team composition, you're really only worried about her applying the attack percent crit rate crit damage buff to the rest of the team. So it's not a big deal if she's not dealing any damage, if she's losing out on some crit and crit damage. She's not the real damage dealer on the team outside of mono imaginary anyway, so it's not a big deal. Now when it comes to this over here, the other 2-piece relic set that I recommend, this is the best in slot for her. The reason being is her ult is her damage dealing real bread and butter. So obviously you want her to land the crit hit. If she doesn't land the crit hit, it's a big damage drop off. So the 8% severely helps, not to mention 15% follow up. I mean, 15% damage bonus to her ult is also huge. It's just great to make sure that her ult in landing the crit strike and dealing a little bit more damage. I really like this. Now there are some other options. You can also use this bad boy right here. It's an energy recharge increase. She goes first. There are some scenarios where her going first could be problematic. Like maybe you're running her with a Ting Yun and you don't want to give the buff to Ting Yun. I don't know. There are some scenarios though where you might not want her to go first on the team. You just want her to go before main DPS, support DPS. This is an option though, definitely. Now the other option is maybe you want her to be a little bit more tankier. You can also go this as a route as well. This is a solid option. But me personally, she's getting this because I want her ult to actually pop off and deal some damage while she's also supporting people. So those are the 3 recommendations. I'm gonna go ahead and say that one more time. This one right here, Fleet of the Ageless, Inert Sol Sato, and Sprightly Von Whack. Boy, these names, bro, I tell you. Anyways, substats, what are we focusing on? Like I said, it's okay to get some HP percent or maybe even some defense percent. You obviously want her to have crit rate and crit damage for her burst, and then speed if it's necessary. Again, you have to fine tune her to go before. I sound like a broken record, but I have to keep mentioning that. So speed is also something you want to build in. Now, how much that might be is going to depend on what your team is and what you're running, but speed is an option. But overall, crit rate, crit damage, some HP, some defense percent here and there, and then maybe some effect resistance to try to prevent her from getting hit by crowd control when the debuff is on cooldown. At the most, the 4 most important stats I'd recommend is crit value, defense percent, and attack percent or speed. And then of course, fill in the blanks with some effect resistance here and there. And yeah, you're pretty much good to go. Now, main stats. Crit rate is an option, but if you actually min-max her to where she has like a 25%, somewhere around there, crit rate in her substats, crit damage is going to be the absolute most peak damage value for her. But that's going to take a good amount of mid-maxing. But basically, if you can get like 25% in her substats, she's sitting around like a 75% chance to crit strike with her ult with a crit damage main stat, which is massive damage increase. So that is an option. This speed 100%, no doubt about it. You already have to fine tune her, so yeah, you're definitely going to want to run speed here. This is going to be imaginary damage bonus 100%, and this is going to be energy recharge. Now, I will say the only way you can escape her not running energy recharge right here is if you have Bronya's Light Cone, her E2 unlocked, her level 70 plus trace unlocked, and then you're running the ER set that makes her go first. If you're running all that, this might be a bit overkill. You can then take this out and put some attack percent in there and get her damage a little bit higher. But other than that, keep it plain and simple. Energy recharge, attack percent, unless you have a ton of ER. And you can also even consider break effect in a scenario where you're making sure she's the one who's sniping the person's shield down and delaying their action value. But that's, again, incredibly niche. Now, I did realize I never finished coming over here. Let me see if I can move this over here real quick. Bloop. All right, perfect. So her E4 is going to give her 30% more damage to enemies when the roaring bowstring buff is active, right? This is going to enable her to deal more damage, not only with her ult, but also with her auto attack. Her E5 just increases her ult further, and then her talent goes up some more as well. And then finally, you unlock the big banger. Her value is so much higher as a support once you unlock her E6. There's a number of things that happens here. One, her auto attack can now use crit rate and crit damage and attack percent buff, which is going to drastically increase its damage, especially with this. So your auto attack now gets attack percent, crit rate, crit damage, and a 30% more damage. So this enables her to really pop off as a DPS, or I mean, not as a main DPS because she only hits one person, but as a supportive DPS. And let's go ahead and talk about that. You got these people running around here saying, "No, my Yukong can deal 100k damage." Bro, your Yukong ain't doing 100k damage unless you got Ting Yun, Bronya, and her all on one team. And that shit is incredibly impractical. It damn sure ain't gonna work inside of the MOC. So you can expect Yukong ideally to deal around 30 to 40k damage, 50k possibly. But for the most part, 100k, that is incredibly impractical. Even if she's dealing 100k, it's only to one target, and I guarantee the rest of your team is dealing no damage at all. So do not fall for these people out here trying to tell you that Yukong's a main DPS. No, the fuck she's not. She's a supportive DPS. Don't let them fool you, bro. Trust me, it's bait. It's all for the, what is it? Damage per screenshot, I think, is the reference of what we use. Anyways, going back to this does enable her to do a lot more damage, but it also enables her to calculate who exactly you want to receive the Roaring Bowstrings buff. Sometimes Genuine's Lightning Lord is coming up and you've ran out of the Roaring Bowstrings buff, but her burst is up. Well, now you can pop her burst right before the Lightning Lord goes. He's going to get all of those buffs, and it's going to be GG's right there. So that's a huge value for her getting that extra stack. Not to mention, it's an extra stack. So when you pop her skill, then pop her burst, there's now 3 Roaring Bowstrings buffs. So somebody like Su Shang, for an example, can now use her skill, ult, and then back to her skill, and it's going to gain the entire Roaring Bowstrings buff duration. And that second skill is more important than the first one because that's the one that deals more ticks. So this shit is huge. Like, she is, again, she reminds me of Kujo Sarah, man. Once you hit her E6, a lot of variables open up for her and she just starts performing off rip. Those are the benefits that popped into my head. There might be another benefit or two, but I honestly don't feel like thinking about it. Just know, if you get her E6, a lot of opportunities open up, guys. And that is going to wrap it up for my build guide for Yukong. Now, there are some geniuses out there who will say like, why don't you put no gameplay in there or showcases? This is a build guide. I'm not here to tell you how to play her. I'm telling you how to build her. I'll do showcases when I do showcases. Stay your goofy ass in the back talking about some, where's this, why aren't you putting any gameplay in there, man? Because it's a build guide. It's not a complete guide. Dear Lord. As always, I know, man, I'm blunt. I'm an asshole at times and I don't care. I love it. I'm not changing and I'm not sorry. Hopefully I brought you guys some value. As always, much love, and I'll catch you on the flip side.